Welcome to another wonderful Susannah Calloway audiobook. We are excited to have you with us. Before we begin the story, please like and subscribe to our channel and share it with friends. This allows us to continue adding free clean Western romance audiobooks for you to enjoy. The following title is copyrighted by Susannah Calloway, Western romance author. Now, find a comfortable spot, relax, and enjoy the story. The Scarred Christmas Bride. Chapter 1. The Civil War never ended in Ned Chapman's mind. Of course, realistically, he knew it had been over for more than a decade, but somehow, it managed to rage on in his dreams. That was one reason he slept in the barn loft. He didn't want to wake the whole household when he erupted from his nightmares. It happened again that night. He was fighting for his life in the Yankee hospital, delirious. His mind escaped back to his wife who lived at the ranch outside Taos, New Mexico. It was his only relief from the pain, the misery. Vera was what kept him struggling to survive. His only reason to keep trying. At last, he arrived home at the ranch only to see his bride look at him with horror. He suffered repulsive scars from his torturous time in the war. He didn't look like the handsome young man who'd left to fight in the war between the states. In his nightmares, he morphed from a good-looking young gentleman into a melting monster, his skin jagged and dangling. Vera screamed as he transformed into the hideous version of himself, and he saw her gulp from the bottle of laudanum in her hand. She drank and drank, chugging the liquid from the amber glass container. He tried to stop her, but she coveted the drug and refused to let go. Minutes later, she crumpled. Dead. She was dead. His war wounds may not have killed him, but their ugliness had murdered his wife. He held her lifeless body in his arms and screamed in agony. No! He jerked awake, bathed in sweat, his heart pounding. His throat felt raw from screaming, old pains seared through him. His curly, brown hair was plastered to his head from the perspiration. Ned scrubbed his palms over his face, trying to wipe away the nightmare. It seemed so real. And it was. It was just about the way it had happened. He'd gone to war, been terribly wounded and spent months in an army hospital, then came home to find his beautiful wife a laudanum addict who couldn't stand to look at him. She blanched and turned her head away from him every time he walked into the same room. She wouldn't allow him to sleep in her bed. He'd only been home a week when she overdosed on the laudanum. Whether it was an accident or whether she did it on purpose, he'd never know. He just knew she was dead because of him. Maybe her brother, Carson Haynes, who was Ned's next-door neighbor, was right. Carson had made sure to spread the rumor that Ned had killed Vera, killed her because he'd lost his mind during the war like so many other men had. He and Carson had never gotten along. They'd been enemies since school days, always scrapping over one thing or another. Ned wondered if perhaps that was why Vera was attracted to him. Her brother didn't like him, so Vera did. She could be contrary like that. A year or so after Vera's death, Carson had offered to buy Ned out. Ned had a good, profitable horse ranch he owned with his brother-in-law, and Carson had always wanted to be the sole owner of those horses. Ned said no, he wouldn't sell his entire herd of horses to Carson or anyone else. The feud had been on ever since. Ned shuddered again, then rolled out of the bed he'd fashioned in the barn loft. He wouldn't be able to sleep anymore tonight. Might as well get started on his chores. He slid his brawny arms into his shirt and was glad the shirt covered up the scars on his chest and back. Unfortunately, there was no way to hide the ones on his neck and jaw. Abby Birch patted the baby as she placed him back in his bed. Micah was almost a year old and fretful from cutting teeth. Now, she'd managed to get him back to sleep at last. She pulled the blanket up over the baby's shoulders and straightened, her gaze going to the window. She saw a light flickering in the barn. Her brother Ned was up already. He'd had another nightmare, she would wager. Pain shot through her heart as she thought about him. He seemed so unhappy, and it wasn't fair. Ned was a good man. Yes, he'd suffered injuries in the war and come home scarred on the outside, but Abby thought he was perfect on the inside. In her opinion, he wasn't hard to look at either. Yes, ragged, puckered lines marred the surface of his jaw and his torso, but he still had beautiful, sable brown curly hair and a rare shade of hazel green eyes fringed with long, thick lashes. He still had a fine physique, and she knew there was a woman somewhere out there who would love Ned for his goodness, his loving heart, and his caring ways. She needed to do something before he turned into a lonely, bitter old man. She just had to figure out what. Lily Lockhart was bored. Extremely bored. Oh, not just now, not just this moment. It seemed like her whole life was boring. She did the same thing every day. Saw the same people every day. Would anything ever change? She'd lived here at the orphanage in Philadelphia for more than a dozen years. She'd come as a frightened, defensive 10-year-old on a stormy night when her life had been saved by a stranger passing by. He'd witnessed her father beating her out in their yard one night. Her savior's name was Johann Schultz. He owned a butcher shop on the corner and had 9 children of his own. He was a big man with ham-like fists, while her father was a sniveling, little coward. She'd never forget how he cringed before Mr. Schultz's fury. When the man demanded that Clyde Lockhart give his daughter to him then and there, her father did it. He ran into their shack of a house, stuffed her belongings in a pillowcase, and brought it out and threw it at Johann Schultz. Her father was a tough guy, all right, when his opponent was a little girl. When a big, muscular man confronted him, he cowered. Johann took Lily home to his wife, and they called the doctor. Lily's mother was dead, probably at her husband's hands, and Lily couldn't go back to her abusive father. The scars were too deep, not only physically, but emotionally, as well. But the Schultz's small house was already overflowing with children. She couldn't stay there. Mr. Schultz had taken her to the orphanage, and she'd been here ever since. The first person she met was Sister Constance Bennett, the woman who had become like a mother to her. They were close, and when Lily turned 18, and it was time for her to leave the orphanage, they decided she would stay, instead. She worked as sort of a house mother, helping with homework, supervising activities, coordinating daily schedules. She'd lived in the same little room where she'd come when she was 10 years old. Lily had never traveled out of Philadelphia. She'd never been properly courted by a man, she'd never had a real adventure. She felt itchy like she needed to scratch, but she didn't know where. She was tired of the same routine, of taking care of other people's children with no hope of ever taking care of her own. Then she saw it. An advert for mail-order brides. The men out west were hungry for female companionship, starving for a relationship with a woman. Were they hungry enough to overlook the scars her father had left on her arms and on her back? Were they lonely enough to accept a woman who bore scars on her heart as well as her body? Chapter 2. Abby huddled with her and Ned's mother, Judith Chapman. They were in the middle of the general store and didn't want to be overheard as they discussed the advertisement in the newspaper Abby held in her hand. "We couldn't," Judith Chapman said, shaking her head. "No, we certainly shouldn't," Abby agreed fervently. "It wouldn't be right." "It would be for a good purpose, though," Judith said hesitantly. "I agree." Abby fingered a skein of yarn, a thoughtful frown on her face. "Would it be so terrible? I mean, if it worked out in the long run?" Judith whispered back. Neither one had mentioned what they were talking about, but both women knew they were trying to decide whether to answer the advert for mail-order brides. Abby had shown it to Judith just a few minutes ago. Ned had been on their minds. In fact, they had talked about his situation, and this almost seemed like an answer to a prayer. If fate would smile on them and send the right woman, Ned could probably learn to love again, learn to live again. "Do you think we should?" Abby murmured to her mother. "I don't think we shouldn't," Judith said and winked. "Maybe God just needs a helping hand to revive Ned." "You know, you're right," Abby decided with a firm nod of her head. "The Lord helps those who help themselves, after all." Lily's hands shook as she tore the envelope open. It was from the mail-order bride agency and there was another letter inside. She looked at Sister Constance with wide, green eyes. "It says the second letter is from a rancher in New Mexico who has put in for a wife." "What should I do?" "I'd say you should read it," Constance said with a smile, laugh lines crinkling around the corner of her eyes. "That way you'll know what it says." Yes, of course, Lily answered and fumbled to unfold the letter. Her gaze swiftly scanned the words written in a strong, clear hand. Hello, miss. My name is Ned Chapman, and I am co-owner of a ranch just outside Taos, New Mexico. We mainly raise horses but also do some cattle. It is a profitable business and can easily support a family. I know this is a big decision for you, but I pray that you will consider making this your home. I offer you a fine house, a decent income, and a kind heart. Do you think you might take this into consideration? Your friend, Ned Chapman. Lily's voice was breathless as she read the letter out loud. Was this it? Was it already time to make her decision? Constance said simply, he sounds nice. Like a gentleman. Yes, he does. And he has a lot to offer, it sounds like. Yes. I don't know, though. You can write anything. It doesn't mean it's true. You're right, sister. Lily felt confusion flood through her. What if she didn't like him? What if she married a man who turned out to be a monster? And another thing. She lived with Sister Constance, a couple of other nuns, and 16 children, but she was mostly left on her own for life's major decisions. No one told her what to do. She made her own choices. Could she get along as a married woman? She would have to pray about this and decide what she should do. Move to New Mexico and marry a stranger? Not only a strange husband to deal with, but also a strange new part of the country. She'd read enough to know that New Mexico was a completely different climate than Philadelphia. And it wasn't exactly settled yet, either. She had read about trouble with Indians there, especially a tribe called Comanches. That was a very scary thought. But then there was the idea of staying here and never experiencing anything new. She could continue as a spinster, taking care of other people's children. Or she could grab life by the horns and choose her own destiny. She trusted the Lord. He wouldn't let her make a bad decision. The part of her that had been frozen stirred to life. She had been ignored by the few men she knew here in Philadelphia. The war had left many widows available. There were many women who didn't have her history or her scars or her father's bad reputation going against them. Her father had been shot to death by another woman's husband shortly after Lily left for the orphanage. Did she want to take the chance? Did she want to risk her future on a whim? What if it didn't work out? She stared at Constance, willing her to give her an answer. Am I really such a coward? She asked herself. Was she really such a faint-of-heart Christian that she didn't trust the Lord to truly guide her in the right direction? The complete change of everything called to her, beckoning her to take a chance on love, or at least on life. If she left with a guarantee that she could return, it wouldn't be so risky. If she didn't shut the door, she could still walk back through it, right? Sister Constance almost seemed to read her mind. You could go and see what you think. If it doesn't feel right, you can come back. Lily looked at the older woman, searching her face for the answer. She looked into the woman's kind, steely gray eyes, seeing the encouraging confidence there. So, Constance actually thought this was a good idea. If that's a promise, I'll do it. Lily finally said. If I can come back if it doesn't work out, I'll go and meet Ned Chapman, see if I like him in New Mexico. If I do, I'll become a mail-order bride. The enormity of what she had just said washed over her, and her knees buckled. She sat down hard on the chair behind her. Lord help her. She, Lily Leanne Lockhart, was going to be a mail-order bride. Chapter 3. Lily was unaware that it wasn't Ned who had written her at all. Judith and Abby hadn't wasted any time in following through with their plan. They'd immediately filled out the mail-order bride application and gotten word that Ned should write a letter to his intended. So, they wrote the letter and signed Ned's name, knowing what they did was so wrong, but hoping earnestly that it would turn out all right. They both spent hours fretting about their deception. If only someone would look deeply enough into Ned's heart, they would see what a good person he was. He deserved to be loved, maybe even more so because he had suffered so much. The two of them huddled together at the desk in the office as they composed an answer to the letter they had received from a woman named Lily Lockhart. She was willing to come west and, if they were compatible, she would marry Ned. What if she's a harlot? Judith asked as she sat with the pen in her hand. What then? Well, she said she wanted time to get to know Ned a little bit. We can use that time as well. We should be able to tell if she's a decent woman or not within a few days, shouldn't we? Abby paced across the floor, patting the baby on the back as she went. You're right, Abby. Of course, you're right. Judith prepared to write again. We're going to need that time, anyway, in order to convince Lily to go along with our plan. If Ned finds out we sent for her to be a mail-order bride for him, he'll disown us or get so angry he'll never speak to us again. That will never work. That is for sure. I just hope she'll be reasonable about it. We are doing the right thing, aren't we, Mother? Abby fretted. We're doing it out of love. That must make it right. Abby nodded her head firmly. Yes. So let's get this letter finished while the men are out mending fences. I'll take it into town tomorrow. We want it to sound welcoming and warm, but we don't want to give the impression that Ned is weak. If Miss Lockhart has a greedy side, we don't want to give the impression that she can have whatever she wants. Judith put the pen to the paper. 30 minutes later, Judith folded the letter into an envelope. That's it. Let's pray before we send it. This is going to take the Lord's blessing if this plan is going to come to fruition. Lily sat back in the train seat and closed her eyes. Her long journey was almost over. Soon the train would pull into Taos, New Mexico, and she would meet Ned Chapman. What would he be like? Would he be as nice as he sounded in his letters? Would he be ignorant or educated? She had no idea. She just hoped he was reasonably intelligent, kind, and a good Christian man. It didn't really matter if he was handsome or fat or what he looked like. If he could overlook the scars on her arms and her back, she could turn a blind eye to a less than perfect physical body. Everything already looked so different from home. Out the train window, she had seen a desert-like landscape overtake the greenery of the tree-filled Midwest, more dusty browns and sage greens taking over from the bronze and scarlets that coated other states this time of year. She'd seen raging rivers, deeply forested lands, and wild animals in the open fields as she'd traveled across the country. It had been an amazing but exhausting journey. She had spent the first hour of her trip trying not to cry. She couldn't get the image out of her mind of Sister Constance standing on the platform at the station as she waved goodbye. A stiff wind had whipped the black cape soot worn over her habit, wrapping it around her slender figure. Sister Constance had suddenly looked older to Lily, who loved the nun dearly. She had stepped in and acted as a mother to a young, frightened Lily. Leaving her was certainly the hardest part of this journey. After a while though, Lily put aside her feeling of loss and isolation and began to enjoy the journey. She loved seeing the different parts of America. Yes, the constant rocking and noise made her feel headachy, and her body was sore. She felt sleep-deprived and dirty, but she was starting a brand new phase of her life. Excitement drummed through her veins as they drew closer to her destination. A few minutes later, the train slowed to a stop, and Lily sat frozen for a moment. It was time to step into a new life, a new world. God be with me, she prayed as she stood. She ran her gloved hands down the wrinkled skirt of her olive green suit and straightened her hat. This was it. She gripped the handle of her carpetbag tighter. The sun was blinding when she stepped from the dim interior of the coach, and she stood, blinking, for a moment. When her eyes adjusted to the brightness, she looked around for Ned Chapman. She didn't see anyone but two women, one of them holding a baby on her hip. They stared back at her and then began to walk her way. Lily Lockhart, the older woman asked timidly. Yes, that's me. Lily smiled a little unsurely. A look of relief washed over both their faces, and Lily couldn't help but see they exchanged a look of satisfaction. The older woman was tall and slender with salt and pepper hair. I'm Judith Chapman, Ned's mother, and this is his sister, Abby Birch, and my grandson, Micah. Ned was busy, so we volunteered to pick you up. Lily was a little confused. The man who wanted to marry her couldn't take the time to come and meet her in person. Well, this wasn't off to a very promising start, was it? We'll tell you more on the way to the ranch, Abby said. Why don't we get your trunk loaded into the wagon and head out? Lily felt hurried and regretted that she was given no time to look around the little town. Hopefully, she would get the chance to see more of it in the next few days. The two women hustled her into the wagon seat as soon as her trunk was loaded, and Judith snapped the reins over the horse's back. Lily cast her gaze around and took in what she could as they rode out of town. They rode directly toward the mountains, following a rough road over the arid landscape. Judith and Abby kept up a steady stream of small talk as the horses clipped along. Lily answered their questions, but was focused on the countryside. Completely different from Philadelphia, she thought, as she eyed the succulent plants and sandy ground. Gnarled trees scattered across the fields, and Lily gasped as she saw a large lizard sunning itself on a rock. The air was cooler than Lily had expected it to be, and she was glad she still wore her warm cape. It felt strange for everything to look so desert-like, yet still have a wintry chill. She drank in the sights, enjoying the breeze whispering against her cheeks. So, Lily, there really is something we need to talk to you about before we get back to the ranch. Abby's voice was hesitant as she changed the subject. I hope you won't be too angry with us, but I have to tell you something. Ned knows nothing about you. Mother and I placed the order for a mail-order bride. Chapter 4. Lily shook her head. She surely hadn't heard right. You ordered a bride? Judith nodded as she guided the horses around a curve in the road. I'm afraid so, dear. You see, Ned is a good, kind man, if I do say so myself. He went to war a handsome young man and came home wounded both inside and out. He found his young bride a laudanum addict who died less than a week after his homecoming. Abby picked up the story from there. He's more like a hermit now. He sleeps in the barn loft because he has awful nightmares, and he doesn't want to wake the entire family. He has some scars that make him self-conscious, and he is hurting from the loss of his wife. He thinks he caused her death. He didn't. She was a laudanum addict long before he came home. We can't stand seeing him living like that. He's too alone. He needs a good woman in his life, someone who'll bring him back to life. Someone who can see him for the beautiful man he is. We hope that's you. Judith finished the story and turned to gaze into Lily's eyes for a moment. We prayed about it before we sent the letters. Lily's eyes grew wide as she listened to the women talk. And because they prayed about it, they thought it was acceptable to deceive her, to get her all the way out here under false pretenses? So I left my home and everything familiar to come and be a bride to a man who doesn't know I exist? She gasped. We're hoping nature will take its course. That he'll fall in love with you, and you will be his bride. You just can't tell him that's why you're here, Abby rushed to explain. Please, please, just give this a chance. Now that we've met you, we know Ned will like you. Lily shook her head. Well, if I'm not his bride, who am I supposed to be? You're my friend. I met you when I went back east to school a few years ago. You've come to spend Christmas in New Mexico. Won't you at least give it until Christmas and see if things work out? We'll be forever in your debt, Lily. Abby adjusted the sleeping Micah in her arms and looked at Lily pleadingly. Lily didn't speak for a minute. She hated being a part of this deception. It made her uncomfortable and put her in an awkward position. Yet Judith and Abby seemed so earnest and sincere, so hopeful that she would agree to the plan. She had planned on taking her time anyway, taking time to get a feeling for the man she was going to marry. Now, she was torn. If she said no, what would she do? Get right back on the train and ride again for endless hours? Go back to where she'd come from with no hope for a different future? The thought sent a shudder through her frame. She felt their eyes boring into her. Then Judith said one simple word. Please. Her voice shook. There was so much emotion cramped in it, and it stabbed at Lily's heart. I will try, Lily finally said. I don't like it, but I will try to not give away your scheme. I have to say, though, I won't lie directly to him. If he asks me, I will have to tell him the truth. I won't, however, correct any information you give him unless he asks. The release of tension was almost palpable. Thank you, the women said over and over again. It actually made Lily feel worse instead of better. Oh Lord, what had she just committed herself to? The closer they drew to the ranch house, the wider Lily's eyes got. The mountains seemed to draw ever closer, towering over the land below. She saw herds of cattle roaming and caught sight of horses scattered around the pastures that crowded the road. The wagon rolled up to the top of a hill and Lily caught sight of the ranch snuggled in the valley in the foothills. It was a combination of a log cabin and an adobe hacienda. It looked like a two-story in the center with two wings on either side. A large wooden patio surrounded the front of the house and its double-doored entry. Wooden furniture and potted plants were scattered around the patio, and it looked warm and inviting. The men are still out working with the livestock, but they'll get your trunk when they get here. Right now, let's go on in and relax. You must be exhausted. Judith led the way through the double doors into a sunny home with polished hardwood floors. Colorful rugs and leather furniture were scattered around the living room. A curved wooden staircase wound its way to the second floor. It's lovely, Lily said as she looked around. She gasped when she spotted a piano in the corner. She hurried over to it and ran her hand across its glossy surface. She never dreamt there would be a piano here. So do you play, Lily? Judith asked. Lily nodded and smiled. I loved to play at the orphanage. Of course, the piano was old and out of tune, but I still loved it. Well, you're welcome to play any time here, Judith said as gave Lily a small hug. I love it when the house is filled with music. Abby came back from putting Micah in his crib and said, let's all have some tea and then we can show Lily her room. Lily's room was on the first floor in one of the wings. The furniture was beautiful handcrafted wood and the quilt and curtains were a cheery blue. There was an armoire against one wall and a small desk sat under a sunny window. A Spanish-style fireplace arched in the center of another wall. It was so large and spacious. Lily was amazed. Her room at the orphanage had been tiny, little more than a cell. She couldn't believe this entire room was just for her use. Abby had shown her to the room, but then left so Lily could clean up and rest a bit before dinner time. Lily had been too excited to do much besides explore this lovely space. Now she plopped her carpet bag on the bed and dug out her brush and hand mirror, placing them carefully on the desk. She shook out a clean blue dress and hung it in the armoire, and then she collapsed on top of the mattress. She closed her eyes. Tension played across her nerves. This was quite a mess she was involved in. Ned Chapman had no idea she was coming or why she was here. He was a man who lived basically in isolation with just his family and his animals. He didn't want a wife. Those two women had lied to her. But they had done it for a good purpose, right? They loved him and wanted to see him happy. But why couldn't they have found a way to do that without dragging her into it, darn it? Lily lay there for a little while, contemplating her situation. She tried to take a nap, but sleep wouldn't come. Her thoughts were too pervasive, too troublesome. She heaved a sigh and gave up, rising tiredly to freshen up. Whatever happened, this was going to be interesting. Chapter 5. Ned hung his saddle in the tack room at the rear of the barn and stretched his aching back. Sometimes aches and pains from his wounds still bothered him, but he usually tried to ignore them. The careless slip he'd taken down a small ravine today had aggravated them, though, and he groaned as he stretched. Better put some liniment on that, Ned, and then I'll see you at the house. Roger Birch, Abby's husband, slapped his hat against his thigh and headed inside. Ned waved at him, then took the ladder into the loft. He had turned part of the space into a bedroom, and he kept a pitcher and basin with water on an old chest he'd hauled up there. He was ready to get cleaned up, eat a good supper, and maybe play a game of chess with his mother. It had been a long day, and he planned on making it an early night. He stripped off his shirt and washed his arms and chest, avoiding looking at the ugly scars that rode across his shoulders and upper arms. He was used to them now and could look at them without dwelling on them, but they were a constant reminder of everything he'd been through. His stomach growled as he ran a comb through his chocolate-brown waves and pulled on a leather vest over a clean white shirt. Now he could go eat. He climbed down from the loft and strode across the barnyard toward the back door of the house, but paused when he heard music floating through the air. The piano? But who was playing, and right before supper? His mother didn't play often anymore, arthritis in her fingers making it difficult, and Abby hadn't played since Micah was born. Suddenly, he switched courses and headed for the front door. He walked quietly across the porch, taking in the beautiful melody as it drifted through the cold twilight. Whoever it was, they were good. He entered the living room and stopped to stare at the woman at the piano. She was a stranger. A lovely stranger with shiny brown hair and a straight back. He could see from her profile that she had a creamy complexion and full, pink lips. She hadn't yet noticed him in the room. He took another step forward, and she caught sight of movement out of the corner of her eye. She glanced over her shoulder and saw him, her hands fumbling to a stop. "Please, don't let me interrupt you. You play beautifully." He spoke softly, fascinated by the face before him. "You must be Abby's brother, Ned," she said at the same moment she saw Abby hustling into the room. "Ned, there you are. I want you to meet my friend, Lily Lockhart. She's from back east. I met her at school. I asked her to play for us while I get dinner on the table." "I see," he said, turning his gaze to the floor. She hadn't reacted to his scars, yet. Maybe she just hadn't gotten a good look at them as most of them were covered by his shirt. She looked like the type of prim little lady who would gasp and flinch, maybe grow pale, at the sight. An imp in him made him step closer into the light and look directly at her, raising his chin to give her a clear view of the damage. He saw her eyes widen and she swallowed, but she didn't look away, didn't make a sound, just looked at him steadily. He didn't just see her chin jet up a bit, did he? "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Chapman." Her voice was mellow, soft. She didn't react at all to the ravages on his neck and jaw. "Better call him, Ned, Lily. After all, you're going to be here until after Christmas," Abby said with a chuckle. "Now, come on, you two, and let's sit down." Ned hesitated. He didn't want to have dinner with a stranger, didn't want to have a stranger here until after Christmas. Especially not a beautiful woman like this one. "I just came in to get a plate," Ned said. "I'll eat in the barn." "Oh, not tonight, Ned, please. Have dinner with us." Abby placed her arm pleadingly on his. "Another night. I've got a headache and just want to eat and go to bed." He knew Abby was aggravated with him, but he couldn't help it. He was aggravated with her, too. She sprang this woman on him totally unannounced and then proclaimed she would be here for a month. Abby knew he didn't like strangers around the place. With that, he headed to the kitchen, filled a plate and grabbed a good half a dozen biscuits. He'd rather be alone than to be on display for a prissy city woman to gawk at, even if she did play the piano like an angel. Lily stared at his retreating back. My, that was rather rude, she thought. Did he dislike her that much already? She'd only met him for a few brief minutes. Those few brief minutes had been enough to see that he was an intriguing man, though. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and had strapping shoulders that tapered down to a flat abdomen and long, muscular legs. His eyes were magnetic, brown with interesting golden flecks in them, fringed in long, thick lashes. Yes, he had scars, ugly scars that had to have hurt terribly when they were inflicted. They twined around his neck and puckered the skin along his left jaw. But the rest of his face was strong with high cheekbones and a straight nose. She couldn't help but notice his fine build and strong muscles. In fact, he was so big he was almost scary. He could crush her without much effort. "I'm sorry, Lily. That didn't go as I planned." Abby looked at her with sadness in her eyes. "He'll feel better tomorrow." "I hope so," Lily replied. "I'd hate for him to be uncomfortable because of me." "Do you think that's why he won't eat with us?" No, of course not," Abby reassured her. "It's like he said, he's got a headache. He often eats in the barn, you know." This isn't anything new. Well, if you say so, Lily said, but silently added to herself, you didn't see the way he looked at me before he left. Chapter 6. Abby finished braiding her hair and let the tail fall down her back. Her nightgown flowed to the floor, and she was ready for bed. It had been a long, stressful day, and sleep couldn't come soon enough for her. So what's going on, Abby? Roger asked as he sat on a bench and pulled his boots off. I know you're up to something. Who, me? She asked innocently. Why do you say that? Because I know you, honey. Who is this Lily really? If she was your friend who planned to come here for Christmas, you would have been all excited and talking about it for weeks in advance. He gave her a look that made her know he knew she was lying, and she relented. Oh, all right. I never could lie to you. She moved over to sit on her husband's lap. I know you're going to be mad. It's a plan Mother and I hatched up. She fessed up to everything with her arms wrapped loosely around Roger's neck, her head resting on his broad shoulder. But you see, we did it out of love for Ned. I just want him to be as happy as you and I are. Roger groaned and nuzzled her neck. You're right. I'm none too pleased. But that's nothing compared to what Ned's going to be if he discovers you and your mom have been plotting against him. I wouldn't want to be you when he finds out. Well, he just can't find out. That's all there is to it. She gave him a playful kiss and stood up. Now what do you say we go to bed, and we snuggle like the happy couple we are? Lily didn't think she would be able to sleep that night from worrying about the situation she was in, but between exhaustion from her long journey and the comfortableness of the mattress, she slept soundly. She was surprised when she woke up and the sun was peeping over the frozen horizon. She hurried to get ready for the day, dressing in a simple brown skirt and ivory shirtwaist with long sleeves. She always wore long sleeves to cover up her own scars on her arms, the ones left there by her father. Whip marks, burns, cuts from the belt flailing against her flesh, she remembered the pain she'd suffered from each one. She didn't know why he targeted her arms, but they seemed to be a favorite spot for him to go for. She did empathize with Ned. She knew how much torture had been inflicted for each mark, not only physically but mentally as well. There was nothing easy about suffering. Lily pulled the front and sides of her hair back to the crown of her head, fastened it with a clip, and let the rest fall free. She'd worn her hair up yesterday, but this was how she wore it on a regular daily basis. She exited her room headed to the kitchen. Abby and Judith were there, and Micah sat babbling and pounding a spoon at his high chair. Morning, Lily, Abby sang out as she cracked eggs in a bowl. Did you sleep all right? Like a contented kitten. The bed is so comfy. Good, I'm glad. The men are out doing morning chores. They'll be in for a quick breakfast then gone again. Okay, what can I do to help? Lily asked. Judith put Lily to work setting the table. Lily had just laid down the last piece of silver when she heard the men coming in the kitchen. She looked up and saw Ned towering over his mother, avoiding Lily's eyes, again. Good morning, Lily greeted him and Roger as she moved to grab the plate filled with toast and set it on the table. Roger greeted her warmly, but Ned just mumbled in her direction. They all took their seats, and to Lily's dismay, she found the only empty chair was the one next to where Ned was sitting. She slid into place, startling a little when her knee brushed against his muscular thigh. It almost felt like a lightning strike. Much to her dismay, that small jolt caused her hand to hit a glass of milk and send it tumbling over, white liquid spilling everywhere, including straight into Lily's and Ned's laps. Lily moaned and started apologizing, jumping up and taking her napkin to the spill. Ned leaped up beside her and stared down at the soaking wet crotch of his pants. The look of shock on his face was priceless. Holy, he yelped. Lily couldn't help that her gaze was drawn immediately to the wet area of his pants, then quickly forced it away. Heat flared in her cheeks, and she worked hastily to clean up the mess. I'm so sorry, she gasped. I'm not usually so clumsy. Forgive me. She hurried to get a cloth to wipe up the floor. Oh, Lily, please don't worry about it. Here, let me get that, and you go change out of that wet skirt. Abby took the towel from her and finished cleaning up while Lily protested, then gave in. Her shoulders sagged. She must be making a great impression, she thought, as she again apologized and hurried from the room. She sat on the bed and clasped her hands to her burning cheeks. She must have appeared a clumsy oaf. Ned's pants had been soaked, right on the crotch. How embarrassing was that? Well, as the old saying went, no need crying over spilled milk. She just knew this wasn't the best start to her first day here. Ned mumbled beneath his breath as he adjusted himself under the damp cloth of his pants. He strode toward the barn, having decided he'd put up with the damp pants instead of taking time to change. He was regretting that decision as he stomped across the yard. He let himself into the barn and shook his head. Miss Lily Lockhart was upsetting his calm, predictable life, and he didn't appreciate it. She was a pretty thing, though, he had to admit. Her hair was shiny and glossy, her eyes twinkled when she smiled, her lips looked soft and velvety. And he'd noticed what she smelled like, too, kind of like strawberries. He took a quick trip up the ladder to the loft and applied a towel to his crotch. Heck, he might as well change pants while he was here. It would make breaking horses go easier on him that day and maybe help him to not be constantly reminded of that little green-eyed gal. He just pulled the clean pants up over his hips when he heard his mother call him from below. "Comin', Ma," he called back, then climbed down the ladder. "Did you need something?" "Yes, son, I do. I need you to be sure and eat dinner at the house tonight." Judith crossed her arms and gave him her best stern mother look. "You know I don't like to be around strangers, Ma," he said as he guided his horse from its stall. "I know it, and you need to practice getting over that. Not all people are as nasty as some others, you know. Maybe I just don't want to waste the time finding out which ones are which," he muttered as he patted Trojan on the back. "We all take that chance every time we meet someone new," she said. "But this is different. Lily is going to be a guest in our home for a month. We want her to be comfortable, Ned. Obviously, your attitude is making her nervous. That's why she spilled the milk this morning. Or, maybe, she's just clumsy. See, there's that disdainful attitude again. Please, son, come to dinner tonight." Ned sighed, shaking his head. "Okay, Ma, I'll come to dinner, but don't be surprised if your little Miss Lily goes running out of the room screaming when she gets a good look at my scars." "Oh, I think she's a little tougher than that, Ned. Your scars are just a symbol of the pain you endured, a testament to your bravery. Don't ever believe otherwise." Judith wrapped her arms around this strong, brave man that was her son and squeezed him tightly. Ned hugged his mother back. Thank God for the support of his family. What would he do without them? Chapter 7. That evening, Lily sat in her room writing a letter to Constance. Abby and Roger were going to town in the morning and could mail it for her, so she needed to get it finished tonight. It wasn't an easy letter to write, however. The situation she found herself in was complicated. She explained how she'd been tricked and was now trying to tell Constance about her first impressions of Ned. "He is a strange man, withdrawn. He wouldn't even eat supper in the house with us that first night. He did come in for the meal tonight, but he barely spoke and left right after supper was over. I don't think I'll ever break through that barrier he has put up, and I don't really know if I want to. He seems nice enough, intriguing even, but also cold. I don't know if this is a man I could spend the rest of my life with, or if I would want to." Lily sighed and signed the letter. She wished Constance was here and that she could feel the older woman's arms around her, reassuring her, telling her everything would be all right. Since she had been 10 years old, Sister Constance had been the one person who had loved her and could make her feel better when she was down. She missed the nun's strong, steady presence and logical thinking. Maybe she would have a solution to this situation. After she'd addressed the envelope, Lily wandered over to the window and looked outside. A light flickered in the loft window. Ned was still awake. The world was still except for a barn cat slipping around the corner of the smokehouse and the old hound dog, Cletus, rolling in the dirt in front of the pasture fence. With surprise, she noted a rabbit leaping across the yard. What was it doing out in the middle of December? Light from a half-moon filtered over the land, and it seemed to call to Lily to come outside, to breathe the fresh air. Everyone else was in bed. What would it hurt if she went out to the porch for a little bit? She gathered up the extra quilt and wrapped it around her shoulders, then tiptoed out the front door. She breathed deeply of the cool, sweet air. She looked across the barnyard and up at the sky. The incredible beauty of the night sky took her breath away. A million stars sparkled in the black velvet sky, the mountaintops seeming to scrape against the heavens. Moonbeams played across the waters of the stream that meandered nearby, and a gentle breeze sighed through the trees. She wasn't used to being so isolated, so alone. In Philadelphia, there was always something going on, people around, even at night. The orphanage was located in a busy neighborhood, and people were always coming and going. It was never this quiet. She made her way to a chair in the corner and sat down, her mind still taking in the wonder of the beauty here. There was something about this land, something that called to her. It might be nice to stay here and get to know it better. But that would also mean getting to know Ned better. That thought wasn't quite as appealing to her. Oh, she loved people and loved to hear their stories, but Ned Chapman wasn't an ordinary man. He had depths guarded by walls that she didn't think she'd ever be able to break down in order to get to know the real man behind them. She yawned and let herself relax against the back of the chair. She really should get up and go to bed. A cold, wet nose woke Lily later. Cletus, the dog, had discovered her and sniffed and wagged his tail, thumping it against a nearby table. "Oh, stop," she protested with a laugh, then suddenly jerked upright as a light flashed in her eyes. Cletus wasn't alone. Ned was standing next to the dog. She must have fallen asleep. The quilt she had wrapped around her had fallen away and the sleeves of her nightgown were shoved up, exposing her scarred arms. She stifled a small yelp and pulled them down to hide the mars. I must have fallen asleep. I just came out to enjoy the beautiful night." She babbled, feeling guilty for some unknown reason. "I see. It's all right. I love the fresh air, too. I just came up to get a snack. I didn't mean to disturb you." He spoke quietly, a puzzled look on his face as his gaze trailed over her now fully covered arms in the light of the lantern. "I can make you some eggs or heat up some leftover chili," Lily offered, pulling the quilt tightly around her. "No, I'll just have a sandwich. You were sound asleep until Cletus woke you up. Why don't you go on to bed?" "I'll be fine." He opened the front door and held it as she entered. Goodness, he'd already talked more tonight than he had the entire time she'd been here. Part of her wouldn't mind continuing the conversation, to see if she could make some headway getting to know him. The other part, however, was much too aware that she was clad only in a nightgown and a quilt. Not really appropriate clothing for a conversation. She nodded. "Good night, then," she said and hurried to her room, closing the door softly behind her. He'd seen her arms, she knew he had, but he hadn't said anything. Maybe it had been too dark for him to get a good look, maybe he was too self-conscious of his own scars to say anything. She crawled into bed and fell asleep as she pondered the question. Ned moved quietly as he grabbed a couple of slices of bread and some cheese. It had felt funny standing there gazing at Lily as she slept. She had looked so peaceful, so content. There had been a little smile on her face as if she were enjoying her dreams. Then he had seen her arms. A web of scars wound their way around those slender limbs, clear up past her elbows, as far as his eye could see. What had happened to her, he wondered. He'd wanted to ask but didn't have the guts. It seemed too personal a question. Whatever the reason she bore those scars, he knew it was painful. They looked old, so she must have been just a little girl when it happened. He wondered if she had been rejected by others, too, as he had been. Like his own wife had soundly rejected him. Suddenly, he was no longer hungry as the memories soared to the surface. Vera had taken one look at his fresh scars and fainted dead away. She wouldn't allow him to touch her, would scarcely stand for him to be in the same room. She was different, too, he wanted to tell her. He'd left a healthy, beautiful wife behind and come back to a woman who looked like a scarecrow. Her hair was dry and frizzy, her skin a sick yellow color. She'd been swallowed up by laudanum addiction, frail and so skinny a strong wind could have blown her away. Apparently, though, he was the only one who could see that. Certainly, her brother Carson couldn't. He'd been quick to spread the rumor that Ned had killed her, that Ned was responsible for her death. Ned's stomach churned as he replaced the bread in the bread box. He didn't think he could eat anything now and not throw it back up. Chapter 8. Thanks so much for helping me make these Christmas stockings, Abby said as they sat in the living room with the sewing in their laps. The children at the orphanage are always really thankful for anything they get. I know. I've lived at an orphanage since I was 10 years old. Lily matched the front of a sock to the back. Kids in orphanages don't get much, if they get anything at all. That is so sad. Maybe we can send a donation to your orphanage. Abby glanced over at Lily. So you didn't leave there when you turned 18? No, I took a job there. It didn't pay much more than room and board, but I liked it. It allowed me to stay near Sister Constance and work with the children who lived there. That's where I learned to play the piano. Sister Constance taught me, and now I teach other children. I enjoy that. Abby grew quiet and her hands paused in their work. Lily, I'm sorry I tricked you into coming out here. I know it was wrong. Lily smiled gently at her. It's all right, Abby, I know your actions were motivated by love, twisted as they were. Of course, I forgive you. If nothing else, I got to see this part of the country, and now I have you and Judith as my friends. Thank you, Lily. Abby reached over and patted her hand. I don't think I would have taken the situation as well as you have. Lily still felt badly about Ned being the only one who didn't know she was really here to be his mail-order bride. Even Roger was in on the secret. Abby had told her. Ned didn't seem to be avoiding her as much lately. He'd come to meals regularly the past few days and even stayed to talk or play chess a couple of evenings. He didn't speak directly to her often, but when he did, he actually looked her in the eyes. He no longer ducked his head every time he spoke to her. That was a step forward in establishing a relationship with him, she supposed, but it still felt like she was somehow playing a dirty trick on him. Wouldn't it be better just to tell him the truth? Did they think he'd get so angry, he'd leave the ranch? Was his temper so fiery that they feared him? Surely not. She opened her mouth to ask Abby when there came a sudden crash from the kitchen. Lily and Abby both leaped to their feet and hurried in that direction, dropping the stockings they were working on. They found Judith lying on the floor, a broken platter shattered beside her. Mother, Abby gasped and rushed to her side. Mother, are you okay? She patted the older woman's cheek, and Judith's eyes fluttered open. Here's a damp cloth. Lily held out the moistened towel. Let me help you get her to the chair. Together they helped Judith into a kitchen chair where she shook her head in confusion. I don't know what happened. I just got dizzy and blacked out. Lily, please run down to the barn and see if you can find Roger or Ned. Ask one of them to ride for the doctor. Lily didn't hesitate. Her feet flew as she ran out the door and down to the barn. She spotted the men just riding in from the field and hiked her skirt so she could run faster. They saw her coming and knew something was wrong. They pulled their horses up to the fence and jumped out of the saddles, coming forward to meet her. Lily was gasping as she told them what had happened and asked one of them to go get the doctor. Ned wasted no time but immediately leapt back on his horse and kicked it into a gallop. Roger watched him go, then turned to follow Lily as she rushed back to the house. Inside, they found Judith insisting she was fine. She still sat in the kitchen chair, her cheeks pale but her back ramrod straight. It was just a little fainting spell. Which isn't normal, Abby insisted as she bounced Micah on her hip. He must have awakened from his nap while Lily was down at the barn. Well, I don't think it will hurt if you go lie down for a while, Judith, Roger said. And I'm going to see that you do. With those words, he reached down and helped his mother-in-law out of her chair, half-hoisted her in his arms and strode toward the bedroom. They were lucky. The doctor was in town and came right out to the ranch. He was a surprisingly young man who took his work seriously and spent time checking Judith over before shaking his head. I just can't say for sure. There is any number of things that can cause faintness, ranging from diet to heart disease. My best advice is to take it easy, don't work too hard, relax whenever possible. Watch for any other symptoms, such as headaches, shortness of breath, nausea, anything. Fetch me if you need me, and we'll try to solve this mystery. Lily walked Dr. Sherwood to the door as the others stayed to be with Judith. She felt his gaze on her as they walked through the living room. So you are a friend of the family, right? Sidney Sherwood asked as she showed him the way. Yes, I am, she said hesitantly. That was really the truth now. It just wasn't why she was here. How long will you be here? He asked, cocking his head curiously, lamplight shining off his golden hair, even if it was a bit receding. Until Christmas, she replied. In that case, Miss Lockhart, may I call on you in the future? Lily missed a step when he asked her. Did he mean court her, romantically? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about seeing anyone while I'm here. Why don't you think about it then? I would like to take you to dinner one night. Thank you, Dr. Sherwood. I'll consider it. Lily blushed, unsure how to react to his proposition. I'll be back to check on Judith tomorrow. We'll talk then. Good night, Miss Lockhart. He left and Lily turned to go back to the bedroom, practically colliding with Ned as he approached. A scowl tugged at his eyebrows as he leveled a cold stare at her. Chapter 9. How long had he been standing there eavesdropping, she wondered. He didn't look happy about what he'd heard, that was for sure. Well, it was none of his business if she wanted to see Dr. Sherwood socially, was it? She tipped her chin and gave him what she hoped was a defiant look. It seems you made an impression on our Dr. Sherwood, he finally said, squaring his shoulders. Well, I wasn't trying to, Lily answered. I imagine he's just lonely and would like a little companionship. I reckon, he said indifferently. I'm going to tend to the horses. With those words, he pushed past her and headed to the barn. She didn't know why she felt guilty about being caught with another man asking her out. After all, she was an adult who could do what she wanted. It was really none of Ned Chapman's business. Yes, she was supposed to be his mail-order bride, but he didn't know that, did he? So he certainly had no right to be angry or jealous. Jealousy. Could that be what created that unhappy look on Ned's face? Don't be silly, she silently scolded herself. Ned Chapman could care less if she even stayed in New Mexico another day, let alone gave a hoot about who she was seeing. She was imagining things. Well, there was no time to think about it now. She needed to help Abby get supper started. Abby and Lily insisted that Judith remain in bed the rest of the night and the next morning. She complained loudly about the confinement, but the girls insisted she stay there until after she had seen the doctor that day. They spent the day baking Christmas cookies and cleaning house. When Sidney Sherman arrived in the early afternoon, he caught Lily as she was sweeping off the porch. Good afternoon, Miss Lockhart. Beautiful day, isn't it? He greeted her. Yes, it certainly is. We've made Judith stay in bed until you've seen her again, but she isn't at all happy about it. You may have a cranky patient on your hands. Well, it won't be the first time, he chuckled. Have you had a chance to think about what I asked you last night? There's a church social on Saturday that I'd love to escort you to. Thank you. That would be nice, but I'm afraid I already have plans for Saturday. She prayed he didn't ask what they were because she had no idea. She just knew she wasn't really comfortable with the idea of going out with him for some reason. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe I'll see you at church on Sunday then, he said. Oh, and by the way, here's a letter Mr. McGee, the man who sorts the mail, asked me to give to you. Thank you. Lily took the letter and saw it was from Constance. I'll take you in to find Abby and Judith. She left the women alone while Dr. Sherwood examined Judith. She went out to sit on the porch to read the letter. It was good to hear from the woman she missed so much. I know you have found yourself in a difficult situation and know that you are praying for guidance. If things do not work out, there is enough money enclosed to buy a return ticket. Stay until Christmas, if you wish, then come home. You know you are always welcome here. Tears burned Lily's eyes as she read the caring woman's words. She did miss Constance and the children. Yet she had promised Abby and Judith she would stay until at least Christmas to see if their crazy plan worked. She sighed and pulled the letter tightly to her chest. Dear Constance. It looked as if she might be seeing her dear friends sooner than she thought she would. Judith had been clear to resume light duty and insisted she felt fine. Perfect, in fact. Definitely good enough to go to church with the family on Sunday. Roger, Abby, Micah, Lily and Judith all climbed into the buggy and Ned rode his horse, Trojan. Lily felt a flare of excitement that she would finally get to see some of Taos and meet some of the people there. It was a small, adobe, mission-style church that Lily found quite charming. She was surprised by the number of people in attendance. The lot in front of the church held an abundance of wagons, buggies, and horses tethered to hitching posts. Lily was introduced to several people before the service, then headed inside for the sermon. It was about honesty and made Lily cringe at the deceit she knew she was a part of. Well, Christmas was just 10 days off. She would have to hold out until then. When the service let out, Judith and Abby stopped to talk to the preacher for a few minutes, and Lily continued outside to breathe in the crisp, fresh air. She had barely crossed the threshold when she heard someone calling her name. It was Dr. Sherwood. He strolled in her direction. Hello, Lily. You look pretty today. Thank you. It's nice to see you again. You, too. I never know if I'll make it to church or not. You never know when a baby's going to be born or a cowboy is going to get kicked by a horse. He chuckled, shoving his hands in his pockets. Oh, hello, Carson. A tall man with a full mustache walked up and shook Sydney's hand. He had wavy brown hair and his flint gray eyes ran over her curiously. Miss Lockhart, may I present Mr. Carson Haynes? Miss Lockhart is a guest of the Chapman family, Carson. Carson raised his eyebrows. Is that so? Nice to meet you. Say, does Ned still have all those horses? Has he been selling any of them? I've never seen so many beautiful horses in one place, Lily said. And they are in perfect condition. I really don't know if he sells them or not. Carson nodded. Yeah, I may be interested in some of them myself. I have a ranch out in that direction. Lily turned her head when she heard Abby call for her. I've got to go, gentlemen. Have a blessed day. With that, she hurried over to join Abby at the buggy. Chapter 10. We brought the Christmas stockings we made for the children at the orphanage. We're going to stop and give them to the kids. I can't wait to see their faces. Abby bounced up and down a little bit, she was so excited. Lily caught some of her excitement and looked forward to meeting the children. Orphanages weren't just located in big cities, she thought. They were all over the world. Poor, parentless children were everywhere. When they entered the orphanage, the first person Lily met was Bridget, a small bird-like woman with a big smile. Come in, she greeted them. Children, look who's here. A dozen or more children gathered around them, greeting them shyly. One little girl hung to the back of the group, her dark hair swinging down to cover her eyes. Hello. What's your name? Lily walked over and asked her. The little girl looked up at her with huge, brown eyes. Tessa. Lily's heart melted when she looked into those eyes, eyes that reflected a painful past. But they still had a look of hope in them, a look of trust. How old are you, Tessa? 6, she lisped through 2 missing front teeth. My, you are a big girl of 6. Would you like a Christmas stocking to hang on Christmas Eve? Lily asked her gently as she held out a stocking. Oh, yes, please, ma'am. She took it carefully as if it were made from spun glass. Thank you. Her eyes glowed as they examined the stocking. This one made me think of you, Lily confided. It has an angel embroidered on it. Now, what would you like to find in this on Christmas morning? Some candy? No, ma'am. All I want for Christmas is a new mommy. She paused and looked up into Lily's eyes. A mommy who is as nice as you. Maybe you could be my new mommy? A stab of pain shot through Lily's chest. Oh, this sweet child. Something deep inside of her desperately wanted to hold the little girl, to take her home and show her all the love in the world. She wanted to be her mommy. I wish I could be, Tessa. I wish I could. They arrived back at the ranch an hour later and made quick work of a lunch of tortillas, a local dish Lily had learned to make. She was amazed by how much she liked the tortillas, beans, and beef. There was rice on the side and canned peaches for dessert. She helped Abby with the dishes and then waved her off to take a nap. You, too, Judith, Lily ordered. She wanted the older woman to take it easy just in case she was still ill. Lily was left at loose ends once the women drifted off to rest. She felt a restlessness overcome her. An image of Tessa played across her mind. Don't think about it, again, she ordered herself. A trip outside was what she needed. Lily wrapped a shawl around herself and strolled across the yard. Some horses in a nearby pasture caught her eye, and she wandered in their direction. She'd always fancied horses, though she'd never had that much to do with them in her former life. Hello, sweetheart, she murmured to a particularly fetching filly who came right to the fence to meet her. You are a charmer. Charm. Maybe that's what I'll call you. Then Charm she is. Lily swirled and saw Ned close by. Do you like horses? Yes. I think they are magnificent animals. Do you know how to ride? She shook her head. I never got the chance to learn. Would you like me to teach you? She flashed her gaze up at him. Was he serious? I would love to learn to ride, she said. Well, there's no time like the present. Come on. What? Really? She gasped as she hurried after him. Yes, really. Everyone here needs to know how to ride. To her utter surprise, he picked her up and plopped her on the top rail of the fence closest to the barn. Wait here, and I'll go get Charm. Lily's nerves built inside her as she sat on the fence. She didn't know if the reason was that she was about to actually ride a horse or the fact that she could still feel the touch of Ned's hands on her waist. The flesh there tingled, and she shivered. The first thing you need to know is how to saddle your horse. Ned brought Charm forward, then fetched a blanket and a saddle from the tack room. Come down here, and I'll show you. He held his arms up and she allowed him to swing her to the ground. There was that tingling sensation again. Remember, always work from the left side of the horse. Ned flung the blanket over Charm's chestnut-colored back. Lily watched and listened closely as Ned saddled the horse and slipped on the bridle. When he was finished, she watched in amazement as he undid everything he had just done. Now you do it, he said challengingly. Lily swallowed, then she moved to obey him. Okay, I'll try. She slipped off her shawl and hung it on the fence, then grabbed the blanket. The blanket was easy, but it turned out the saddle weighed more than she had guessed. She heaved it up on Charm's back, her sleeves falling back and exposing her arms. Her gaze flew to Ned's and he laid his hand on her arm. Don't worry about your scars, Lily, he said quietly. I've seen them before. That night on the porch. Please don't worry. You know I have scars, too. Yours do not affect your beauty at all. I still think you're beautiful. Her breath caught in her throat as he moved closer. Instinct made her tip her head up as his came down and their lips met in a sweet, heart-melting kiss. Lily was stunned by his kiss, and he seemed to be just as surprised. They looked at each other for a long time before Ned shook his head and turned back. Okay, now let's see you put the bit in. Ned found himself whistling as he cleaned up for dinner. He had enjoyed this afternoon more than any he could remember in the last 10 years or more. Spending time with Lily had turned out to be peaceful and pleasant, not the stress-filled interaction he was used to with other people. He was surprised by the urge he'd had to kiss her, but wasn't disappointed in the action. She had tasted sweet, like cherries, almost, and her lips had been soft and gentle, and almost hungry under his. He could imagine just kissing her for hours at a time. The mere thought had him feeling a burn he hadn't felt for a long time. Maybe his luck was changing. Maybe fate had decided to give him a second chance. This was something he was going to have to think about. Right now, though, his mind was on supper. Not only could he fill his stomach, he could also fulfill his desire to see Lily again. Lily was busy baking cookies for the orphanage. They wanted to have plenty to fill the stockings with on Christmas Eve. They'd also donated oranges, combs, whistles, and sundry other little things. At least, the children at the Taos orphanage would have some semblance of Christmas. A dozen thoughts flitted through Lily's mind as she rolled out cookie dough. She and Ned had been getting along well ever since her writing lesson. He hadn't missed a meal in the house, and he spent more time inside with the family. He wrestled on the floor with Micah and played chess with whoever was willing to take him on. Last night, he'd asked Lily to play the piano, and they'd wound up with everyone gathered around singing Christmas carols. Something was changing about their relationship. She hardly knew what to make of it. They were more comfortable being together, and they could carry on a conversation without avoiding looking at each other. In fact, Lily rather enjoyed looking at Ned. He was a big, strong man with the grace of a mountain lion, and she liked to watch him as he strode across the room or worked with the horses. She liked the way his hair fell in soft curls, just brushing the collar of his shirt. His hair was a beautiful color, silky and shiny. When the sun hit it just right, fiery highlights danced deep in its surface. Heat filled her cheeks as she thought of how it would feel to run her fingers through those glossy curls. But she still was hiding something from him, and that thought did make her uncomfortable. She hated keeping this secret from him, especially since they seemed to be getting along so much better now. If he found out, he might never forgive her for taking part in it. She had just stuck the pan of cookies in the oven when Judith came into the room. It smells good in here," she said, sniffing appreciatively. "They are gingerbread cookies for the orphanage," Lily informed her. "The children will love them." "Lily, I wanted to tell you, it seems you're making some progress with Ned. I've wanted to talk to you about that. He must think you are really special. He doesn't allow just anyone near his horses, you know. I think you're going to make him a wonderful wife." "I don't know about that, Judith. It's only a few days until Christmas and Ned still doesn't know why I really came here." Lily plucked at her apron nervously. "And he mustn't find out, Lily." Judith's tone was firm. "I think he's going to come around on his own and he'll never have to know." "Do you honestly think that's fair to him, Judith?" "It just seems wrong to me. That's something I'd have to live with on my conscience for the rest of my life." "Lily, Ned is a proud man. He'd be humiliated if he thought his mother and his sister had to step in to find him a wife. Please," she turned imploring eyes on Lily, silently asking her to keep the secret. Lily still hadn't answered when Ned walked in the back door. "Hi there, ladies. What are we talking about today?" he asked with a smile as he reached for the coffee pot. "Lily is making more cookies for the orphans," Judith answered without missing a beat, but when she turned, she shot Lily a cautioning look. Lily sighed and started wiping down the table. She was going to have to make a decision soon. The evening was warmer than usual, so Lily decided to enjoy some fresh air. Goodness, but this was becoming a habit, and a pleasant one at that. She drew her shawl around her and wandered around the yard. She could hear the lonely wail of a coyote in the distance. In the shadows, saw what she thought might be deer prints just a few feet in front of her. She stopped and raised her gaze to the sky. Once again, it was studded with a plethora of diamonds, a few clouds scudding across the velvety surface. She'd never seen skies like this in Philadelphia. Here they were so clear, so vast. The only thing blocking her view was the towering mountains. Somehow, she had fallen in love with this place. With its rawness, its harsh beauty. She couldn't imagine returning to the hustle and bustle of the city with its traffic and noise 24 hours a day. But she better get used to the thought. Ned had not mentioned sharing a future or anything that gave her hope that things might work out. Even if they did, she didn't want to start things off with a lie between them. As if her thoughts had conjured him up, she heard a noise behind her and turned to see Ned approaching her. "I saw you from the barn and came to see if everything is all right," he said as he stepped near. "Yes, it is. I just wanted some fresh air before going to bed. It's a beautiful night. That's for sure." "Did you find the Big Dipper?" he asked, pointing upwards. "It's right over there." "Oh, yes, there it is," she exclaimed in delight. "So the Little Dipper is right there?" "No, a little bit this way." He put his hands on her shoulders and adjusted her a bit. Lily's breath drew in sharply at his touch. "Lily, there's something I wanted to ask you," Ned said. Oh, Lord, was this it? Was he going to ask her to marry him? Or at the very least, was he going to ask if he could court her? "You know I got my scars in the war. How did you get yours?" She felt the tension melt from her body as she realized he wasn't proposing. She wasn't ready to answer him until things were clear between them, anyway. Instead, a different kind of tension played through her. She didn't like to talk about her scars, or her father. My father did it," she finally said in such a low voice it was barely a whisper, then grew stronger in his steady presence. "My mother died shortly after I was born, and he blamed me for it. He liked to hurt me, especially on my arms. He'd make me stick them out and he'd whip them." "Ah, Lily," he sighed and pulled her close. "No one should have to endure that. That's what Mr. Schultz said, too. He caught my father beating me one night when I was 10 years old and took me away to Sister Constance. I never saw my father again after that. He was killed a month later." She shuddered against Ned and closed her eyes. She hated remembering those times. They had been filled with fear and pain and had consumed her dreams with terror for years. "Poor little girl," he murmured, stroking her hair. They stood like that for several minutes before Lily pulled away. "Being taken away from him was the best thing that ever happened to me," she confessed. "I grew up healthy and well taken care of at the orphanage. You grew into a beautiful, kind woman. I'm surprised you aren't bitter. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you." Lily recited the verse quietly. "Sister Constance taught me that, and I've repeated it to myself at least 1,000 times." They didn't speak for a minute, then Lily gave him a little smile. "I need to go to bed. I'll see you tomorrow." "Let me walk you to the door," he said, and moved along beside her. When they reached the door, he leaned over and planted a kiss on her forehead. "Good night, Lily. Sleep well." With that, he turned and strode to the barn, Cletus the dog galloping at his side. Chapter 11. Lily was mad at herself. Last night had been the perfect time to tell Ned about the scheme she had gotten embroiled in, and she hadn't done it. Coward. She berated herself. You didn't want to face his anger alone, did you? She angrily snapped the rug she was shaking, then turned back to replace it in front of the sink. Abby was in the kitchen fixing Micah a bite to eat, and she eyed Lily curiously. "You seem a bit agitated today, Lily. Is there anything wrong?" "Oh, Abby, I don't know what to do. I know you and your mother don't want Ned to know about your plan, but I feel so guilty. It's like I'm lying to him. But it's working, isn't it?" Abby watched Lily as she swept the room. "I can tell. Ned likes you. A lot. But he doesn't know me. At least, not the real me. He thinks I went to school back east, but last night I told him about the orphanage. He's not stupid, you know. He's going to put 2 and 2 together and realize I'm lying to him." Abby didn't say anything as she scooped a spoonful of applesauce into Micah's mouth. Then she turned and looked at Lily. "I never told him I went to school with you. I just said I met you when I was going to school. He won't figure it out, Lily. Not if we're lucky, anyway." Lily was about to answer her when they heard a clatter out front and Abby peered out the window. "Oh, it's Roger and Ned, and they've brought home a Christmas tree. Let's go see." "Come, Micah." Lily sighed as she followed Abby out the door. Another chance to set things right was gone. Was she ever going to get to make this better? She felt like she was smothering beneath the weight of this secret. She made a decision. Even if Ned did ask her to marry him, she couldn't do it unless he knew the truth. They decorated the Christmas tree that evening. It was a festive affair. They hung the strands of popcorn and cranberries they had been stringing all day and added ornaments made from cookie dough and tied with ribbon. Lily laughed out loud as she and Ned nearly collided while they each ran a strand of popcorn around the tree. Judith popped into the room bearing a tray of cookies and spiced apple cider, and a warm feeling of family filled the air. Lily thoroughly enjoyed it. When Ned again asked her to play the piano, she smiled and moved to the bench. She was surprised when he sat down beside her and her fingers trembled slightly as she started playing Silent Night. He sat next to her, his shoulder brushing hers. He had a beautiful, clear baritone and sang with feeling. Lily didn't want the night to end. Everyone seemed so happy, so content. There were not many moments she could recall at the orphanage that felt so good. Yes, she had been happy, but she hadn't been stirred with emotion. Here, with this family, she knew what she had been missing. This family shared a connection, a bond that came from knowing they were one unit, that they loved each other unconditionally. Tears stung her eyes, and as she finished playing, joy to the world. She wanted to be a permanent part of this family, longed to stay with them forever. She knew in her heart that she had fallen in love with Ned and wanted to be his wife. Would he turn her away when he found out she had tricked him? Oh, she hadn't done it on purpose, not really, but the deceit was there. Well, it's been lovely, but I really am tired. I think I'll call it a night. He looked surprised but moved to let her stand. Thank you for making this evening special, Lily, he said, looking into her eyes. I'll see you tomorrow. Lily hurried out of the room and slipped away. She'd promised not to say anything to him until at least after the holiday. She needed Christmas to get here so she could either tell him the truth or go back to Philadelphia. Lily didn't sleep well that night. For the first time in weeks, she had a nightmare. It started out with her father yelling at her, screaming at her. Liar, he shouted. You are a filthy liar. He raised his belt and brought it down on her arms, pain searing through her as it bit into her flesh. No, Daddy, no, I'm not lying. Lily shrank into a corner as she raised her arms in front of her face. Don't hit me. I'm not lying. Suddenly her father morphed into Ned. You are lying, Lily. I'll never forgive a liar. No, Ned, it wasn't me. I didn't lie. I just didn't confess. Liar. Get out of my life. His face contorted with rage, and he turned and walked away from her without looking back. Lily awoke with a gasp, her heart pounding madly. The sheets were twisted around her legs and tears were wet on her cheeks. She knew, deep inside, that is exactly what would happen when Ned discovered the truth. He would banish her from his life. And she would deserve it. How could he trust a liar? Maybe she hadn't lied to him directly, but it was a lie of omission just the same. She was here to get a husband, and he was her target. She wasn't the innocent visitor he thought she was. Chapter 12. 3 more days. 36 hours. That was all she had to endure until Christmas arrived, and Lily could tell Ned the truth. She knew then there would only be 2 choices for him. He could forgive her and maybe, just maybe, he would ask her to marry him. Or he could get angry and not speak to her again. Her only choice then was to return to Philadelphia. Her sleepless night was telling on her. She'd had a nagging headache all morning, and her eyes burned with fatigue. When she told Abby she wasn't feeling well and would skip their planned trip into town to get last-minute Christmas supplies, she hadn't been lying. Her stomach was churning. She waved goodbye to Roger and the ladies, then headed back in to bake some bread. Despite not feeling well, she might as well make herself useful if she was going to stay home. She set the bread on the counter to rise. Maybe some fresh air would help her feel better. She could go gather some pine cones and greenery to add a festive air to the table. She hung a basket on her arm and walked out into the sunshine. There was a nip in the air, but it felt good. Invigorating. She walked along a trail into a stand of trees and stooped to pick up a few pine cones. And there were the perfect green fawns to make a centerpiece. She smiled as she gathered up the fragrant greenery. She had a red ribbon that would make the perfect bow. By the time her basket was brimming with boughs and cones, she was ready to head back. She was glad she had taken the time to come out here and breathe the clean air. She needed to enjoy this time. After all, she might be back on a train east within the next week. She approached the barn from the side and noticed a man had pulled up on his horse in the yard. Curiosity sent her forward. "Howdy, Miss Lockhart. Remember me, Carson Haynes?" He doffed his hat and grinned, showing off the perfect white teeth beneath his mustache. "Oh, yes, of course, Mr. Haynes. What brings you out this way?" "I'm afraid that Judith and the Birches have gone into town." "That's okay. It was Ned I was wanting to see. I heard he has a stallion I might be interested in. Maybe a couple of mares, too." He climbed down from his saddle and moved towards the corral. "I'm afraid I don't know where he's at right now," she said, hurrying to keep up with him. "Well, I bet he won't mind if I just take a look at these fine-looking animals here. Now, those are some mighty nice horses." "Well, I don't know. I don't think he'll have any objections to me just taking a look. After all, we are neighbors." Lily knew he might be right, but she couldn't get the sound of Judith's voice out of her head. "He's particular about those horses," she'd said. "He doesn't like hardly anybody around them. I think you should wait until Ned gets back." She stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "Please. Ned," he guffawed. "You think Ned is so high and mighty? You think he's such a respectable rancher, do you? Let me tell you something about Ned Chapman." Lily stepped backward, alarmed by his aggressive stance. Why was he so angry? Ned Chapman killed his wife. She was sick when he came home from the war, and he didn't want to deal with her. He sneered as he said it. "He's the one that gave her that overdose of laudanum. She didn't take it herself. I don't care what they told you. Tarnation, he takes better care of his horses than he does his people. I think you better go now, Mr. Haynes." Lily drew herself up straight and tried to sound stern and confident. She had seen that flash of cruelty in his eyes, just like her father's. She didn't want him to see she was scared. "Listen to me, woman." He stepped closer and grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her. "Ned Chapman is no good. He should have been hung when he killed Vera. My sister, Vera." Lily's head flopped back and forth as he shook her. When he suddenly released her, she staggered back, tripping over a tree root. She hit her head, stunned, and then the world went black. Carson looked at the woman where she sprawled and tried to figure out what had happened. There, that rock, she must have hit her head on it. She was out cold. He stood up and cast his gaze around him. No one was in sight. Maybe this was the perfect time to give Chapman a little Christmas present. Maybe some mayhem would do. With that thought, he walked over and unlatched the gate to the pasture and shooed the horses out, waving his arms and hollering. The herd took off, thundering across the open ground. There were a few more in the other field. Maybe he'd just help himself to them. He mounted his horse and went to gather up the horses he'd decided he was taking home. Lily was cold. She squirmed against something hard and blinked her eyes. The blue sky radiated overhead, and she immediately closed her lids again. Why did her head hurt so badly? Voices floated into her consciousness. She opened her eyes for a minute. "Lily, wake up. Are you okay? Please say you're all right." Lily opened her eyes again and noted Abby's worried face. Judith and Roger were there, too. Oh, good, she wasn't alone anymore. That was the last thought she had as she drifted back into unconsciousness. "Let's get her to the house," Judith ordered. "After you carry her in, Roger, ride for Doc Sherwood." Abby ran on ahead to turn down the bed, and Judith carried Micah. Roger scooped Lily up in his arms and took her inside, laying her down gently. "It looks like she's got a little cut on her head," he said as he eyed a streak of blood on his shirt sleeve. "I'll get Doc as fast as I can." Abby moved to Lily's side while Judith dampened cloth and began to bathe Lily's head. "Oh, Mother, I feel so bad. If it wasn't for us, Lily wouldn't be hurt right now. It was a stupid idea, anyway. We should have never cooked up this plan." "Don't be silly, Abby. Lily getting hurt has nothing to do with us ordering her for Ned to be his mail-order bride for Christmas. Right now, we just need to worry about getting her well." "There might be one other thing you have to worry about," Ned said, stepping into the room, his face a cold, angry mask. "What do you mean, you ordered her to be my mail-order bride?" Chapter 13. "Ned," Judith's hand flew to her throat. "How about we talk in the hall, Mother," he said, holding the door open. "Are you in on this too, Abby?" She nodded guiltily and rose to her feet. He waved for her to go before him, then followed them out of the room. "I ran into Roger. He told me you found Lily laying out by the pasture, hurt." "Yes. Roger went to get the doctor. I don't know what happened." Abby wrung her hands as she waited for the explosion she knew was coming. "Well, the horses are gone. I need to go get them back. But first, I want you two to tell me exactly what you've been up to." "Oh, Ned, we did it because we love you. You were so glum and gloomy, in a really dark place. We thought if you had a good woman of your own, maybe you'd snap out of it. So we answered an advert from a mail-order bride agency." Judith hurried to explain, then Abby jumped in and told him more, how they'd begged Lily to go along with them. She didn't want to, but finally agreed. Ned looked at the two women he loved dearly, his mother and his sister. They had gone too far this time. What gave them the right to order him a bride? Tarnation, he didn't plan on ever getting married again. Anger and frustration roiled up within him, and he looked at the two with a disgusted scowl on his face. He shook his head. "I've got to go get my horses back, but we are not done talking about this. Not by any means." With that, he slammed his hat back on his head and stormed out the door. Lily lay in bed, staring at the wall. She didn't know what time it was, she just knew it was late. She had been in and out of consciousness all afternoon, and only flashes of memory were clear to her. She knew Dr. Sherwood had been here. He said she had a mild concussion and should stay in bed the next day. Later in the evening, after Lily had been awake, Abby had confessed that Ned had discovered their plan for his mail-order bride. He was angry when he left and didn't say when he'd be back. Now she lay there staring into the dark and wondering what Ned was thinking. How angry was he with her? Did he hate her for her deception? She could imagine the hurt look on his face, the pain in his eyes. She closed her eyes and sighed. He couldn't be any madder at her than she was angry with herself. She should have never allowed herself to be lured into this situation. She knew with no doubts that she had fallen in love with Ned. He was so patient, so kind. And despite his scars, she thought he was a beautiful man. When she looked into his eyes, she felt herself drowning in their depths. They were mesmerizing. It was almost as if he were communicating with her only with his eyes. The touch of his hand started her blood boiling, and she felt a hunger building inside her whenever his flesh touched hers. Just thinking about those feelings made goosebumps pop up on her skin. She wanted to marry the man, but that would be impossible now. He was too angry. How could he ever trust her again? A marriage without trust wasn't a real marriage. And that was what she wanted. A real, true marriage where both people loved each other deeply and wanted the other's happiness even more than their own. "Oh, what a tangled web we weave," she thought despondently and rolled over her on her side, wadding her pillow into a bunch beneath her head. It wasn't long before the fabric grew damp from the tears she shed on it. Despite being ordered to stay in bed, Lily gave up on that shortly after noon. She couldn't stand laying around one more minute. Christmas was just 2 days away, and there was much that needed doing. She needed to finish polishing the silver and making the pumpkin pies. She used extra caution when she did her hair, carefully avoiding the spot where Sydney had taken 6 stitches. In the end, she simply pulled it back in a low ponytail and dressed in a simple blue dress. "Lily, what are you doing up?" Abby asked when she came into the kitchen. "Sydney said for you to stay in bed today." "That's silly, Abby," Lily said as she poured herself a cup of coffee. "I feel fine, and there's too much to do for me to loll around in bed all day." Judith fussed over Lily and made her sit down to drink her coffee. "No sense in overdoing it, girl. Besides, I need to tell you all exactly what happened yesterday." Lily motioned for the other two women to join her at the table. "I didn't just trip and fall yesterday. I was pushed." The women gasped, and Lily continued telling them the story and concluded with, "He must have let the horses out, too. Oh, that Carson. He's got a devil inside of him, for sure." Judith smacked her fist on the tabletop. "He's caused Ned nothing but trouble, spreading that rumor about Vera, accusing him of murder." "Lily, you need to tell the sheriff exactly what happened," Abby said. Lily shook her head. "What good would that do, Abby? It would be my word against his. No, now that Ned knows the truth, I'd really rather just enjoy Christmas and then go back to Philadelphia. I want to let it go." Both women shook their heads but didn't voice their objections. Lily stood up and said, "All right, then. That's settled. I'll polish the silver now." Chapter 14. Ned led the last 3 horses he had rounded up behind him as he headed back toward the ranch. He was tempted to spend another night out here on the range like he had done last night, wrapping up in the bedroll he carried. There were still a couple more horses running loose, he thought. Maybe he could find them first thing in the morning. Right now, the sun was sinking low over the horizon and the wind was picking up. Maybe he would stop and build a fire. He selected a spot protected by a big boulder and not far from a creek, then slid his saddle off Trojan. He gathered up some wood and built a fire before starting a pot of coffee. Spreading out his blankets, he collapsed onto them and leaned his back against the rock. He was beat. Not just physically, but emotionally as well. He couldn't believe his mother and sister had actually picked out a bride and ordered her through the mail for him, like she was a sack of feed. They must have forged his signature to accomplish it. And poor Lily. She had honestly thought she was coming to New Mexico to get married, to start a new life. She had left everything familiar behind and stepped out and took a chance, and look what happened. Her husband-to-be turned out to be 2 meddling women pretending to be a man. How had they ever managed to talk her into playing along? He'd like to take both their heads and clonk them together. Did they actually think their little scheme would work? But it had worked, hadn't it? A little voice inside him asked. He had come to care about Lily, care about her very much. She was always happy, often singing or playing the piano, and she pitched in and helped wherever she was needed. She hadn't lied to him outright either. He couldn't think of anything she'd said that probably wasn't the truth. She'd told him about growing up in an orphanage, about her father's abuse. She'd been honest about the important stuff. He liked the way she looked, too. Her complexion was pretty and pink, her cheeks glowing with wholesomeness. Her eyes reminded him of jade, a mysterious jewel he'd seen pictures of, and her hair fell in a silken mantle around her slender shoulders. An image of Lily as she sat and played the piano, smiling up at him, ran before his eyes. She had never once looked at him as if she were horrified by what she saw. He threw his head back and laughed out loud. Darn, if he could be angry at his mother and sister for bringing Lily into his life, for bringing him love. Lily was the best Christmas present ever. And now he had run off and left her without even waiting to see how she was. Guilt plagued him the rest of the night. Surely, she was okay. He remembered how she looked lying on the bed, so slight she barely made a bump under the covers. She had been pale, but she was all right, wasn't she? He had to get back and make sure. And if she was all right, he was going to tell her exactly how he felt about her. He loved her. He really did. Darn it, if those 2 scheming women hadn't been right after all. He did want to marry her. By the time the sun was peeping over the horizon, Ned was saddled up and on the way home. It should only take him a couple of hours to get there if he took the shortcut. He hated to do it. It cut across the Haynes property. Vera and her brother Carson had lived there. Carson still did. But if he went the other way, it would cost him another hour, and he wasn't willing to waste another hour being away from Lily. He guided Trojan over the land, hoping that he wouldn't run into Carson Haynes. They hadn't gotten along even before he and Vera married. In fact, he wondered if Haynes' dislike for him wasn't part of the attraction for Vera. Carson had raised Vera since their parents died when she was 12, and she'd always resented her big brother ordering her around. He searched the landscape when he drew near the Haynes barn, but he didn't see any human life anywhere. A few horses grazed in a pasture nearby, and he squinted to get a better look at the animals. Those looked like the animals he was still missing. Ned rode closer and confirmed it. Yep, those were his all right. His branding mark was in plain sight. Ned gathered his horses and fought down his anger at the same time. He should go pound on the door, see if Haynes was at home and beat the devil out of him, but he didn't want to spend Christmas Eve feuding with his neighbor. Maybe he'd just take a detour through town and tell the sheriff the story and leave it in his hands. He rode on home and ran into Roger when he took Trojan to the barn. "How's Lily?" he asked. "She's okay. She was having breakfast a few minutes ago." "Take care of Trojan, will ya? I need to see Lily." Ned tossed him the reins and hurried into the ranch house and hollered for Lily. "Lily, where are you? I need to see you." Lily froze in place when she heard Ned's calling voice. He must be really mad if he wanted to see her badly enough to go yelling through the house for her. She'd been changing the sheets on her bed, but she guessed she'd better stop. Might as well face the music and get it over with. Lily emerged in the kitchen where she found Ned talking to Abby and Judith. When she walked into the room, he spun and faced her. "Lily. There you are." "Yes, here I am. I heard you yelling for me. I was in a hurry to find you. I've got something to tell you." Lily braced herself. Here it comes, she thought. He's going to tell me he never wants to see me again. "Lily Lockhart, I love you. You may have been brought here with trickery." He turned and glared at the other two women, but somehow, their plan managed to work. "I have fallen in love with you. Please don't go back to Philadelphia." Lily's mouth dropped open and she stared at him in amazement, then shook her head. Had she heard him right? He loved her? Lily glanced at Judith and Abby and knew from the happy looks on their faces that she had heard him correctly. Oh, dearest Lord. Ned didn't hate her. He had just declared his love for her. Lily sucked in her breath, and her eyes blossomed with joy. "Oh, Ned, I love you, too. I honestly do." They moved as one across the room to end up wrapped in each other's arms. Their lips came together, and they exchanged a hungry kiss, Ned's hands trapping her head between his palms. When Lily gasped and looked up, Abby and Judith were gone. She and Ned were alone in the kitchen. "Lily, you are a beautiful woman both inside and out. Come outside and talk a walk with me." She nodded, and he took her hand and led her out the door into a bright, sunny morning. The world seemed to glow beneath the golden sunbeams that danced across its surface, and a saucy breeze tickled Lily's hair. Ned didn't walk far before he turned and dropped to his knee, taking her hand and kissing the back of it. "I thought I was in love once." His voice was quiet, growing stronger as he talked. But that love was weak. It couldn't take the wounds life dealt out, and it withered and died beneath the scars. This is different. This love is strong. We both have scars to prove it. Lily, I love you. Will you be my wife? Oh, yes, Ned. Yes, yes, yes. He stood and took her in his arms, kissing her again fervently. How soon can we have the wedding? Would tomorrow be too soon? Tomorrow? I'd love it, Ned, but I don't think we can make arrangements that fast. I happen to know Ma has invited Father Joe for Christmas dinner, he whispered. Oh, Ned, that is perfect. We'll get married on Christmas Day. She laughed with delight. That way, You'll never be able to forget our anniversary." The two of them laughed, then grew serious again as they sealed their love with another kiss. The end. Thank you for listening to this heartwarming story by Susannah Calloway. You can be assured that all her books are clean and wholesome. To find other romances by Susannah Calloway, as well as the other authors at Tika House Publishing, visit www.tikahousepublishing.com. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next Susannah Calloway Western romance.